My name is Caroline Hayes, and I'll never forget the night I ran through smoke and flames with my little girl pressed against my chest. The air was so thick I could barely breathe, and every step felt like it might be my last. I remember clutching her tiny hand, whispering silent prayers that somehow we'd make it out alive. That night wasn't just about fire-consuming wood and walls. It was about betrayal, consuming the life I thought I knew. I used to believe my family was ordinary, a picture-perfect husband, a curious little girl with eyes that saw wonder in everything, and a home that carried generations of history. But behind the polished smiles and everyday routines, shadows were forming. I didn't see it at first, or maybe I didn't want to. I wanted so badly to believe that love could weather grief, that marriage could survive tension, and that my instincts were just my imagination running wild. But I was wrong. What I discovered shook me to my core. The man I trusted with my life, the man I thought would protect our daughter, had been quietly planning something unthinkable. And if it weren't for Lily, my 6-year-old with a gift for seeing what I could not, we might never have made it out that night. This is not just a story about survival. It's about the quiet warnings we ignore, the courage we don't realize we have, and how even the smallest voices can save us. Let me take you back to where it all began. On the outside, our house in a quiet Boston suburb looked like the picture of a perfect family. The white shutters, the trimmed hedges, the sound of a child's laughter spilling out of the front windows. It all looked so ordinary, so safe. Inside, mornings were filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the chatter of Lily's imagination. She was 6, endlessly curious, and she had a way of noticing magic where most of us only saw routine. I remember her pressing her little hands against the glass, telling me how the clouds looked like rabbits or dragons, as though the sky was painting just for her. Those moments made my heart swell. Sitting at the kitchen table, pouring orange juice into her cup, watching her swing her legs as she talked about her dreams. It was everything I thought motherhood was supposed to be. I wanted to freeze those mornings forever, to hold on to the simplicity of Lily's wonder. And then there was Michael. My husband always looked polished, the kind of man people admired at the office and around the neighborhood. He wore his confidence like a tailored suit, and to most, he seemed flawless. But at home, his smile didn't always reach his eyes. There were times when he'd brush past me too quickly, or when his voice carried a sharpness that left me second-guessing myself. I told myself he was stressed with work, that I shouldn't take it personally. But in the quiet moments, the unease lingered. Adding to that tension was Helen, my mother-in-law. She had a habit of showing up unannounced, her presence filling every room with an air of judgment. To others, she came across as gracious, refined, even charming. But when it came to me, I could feel her disapproval in every comment she made, subtle reminders that I wasn't enough. Not for her son, not for the family name, not even for Lily. She doted on my daughter, but only when Lily was quiet and obedient, like a little adult. I hated seeing that spark in Lily's eyes dim under her grandmother's expectations. Still, I tried to focus on the good. On evenings when Lily would curl up in my lap with her stuffed rabbit. On afternoons when I worked on my project for the museum. My dream of giving overlooked women artists a voice again. Those moments felt like anchors, reasons to believe that the cracks I saw were just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something was shifting. Michael's phone calls taken behind closed doors, the way his words grew more guarded, how he seemed restless even during family dinners. I brushed it off as pressure from work, but my gut told me otherwise. I'd catch him watching me, not with love, but with a kind of calculation that sent a chill through me. It's strange how you can live in a home that looks so stable and yet feel the foundation slipping beneath your feet. From the outside, we were the Addams family, respectable, admired, ordinary, but within those walls, silence carried weight, glances cut deeper than words, and love didn't always feel safe. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking, that grief from my mother's passing was making me suspicious, that I just needed time. But each night, as I lay awake, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was gathering around us. I didn't know yet what I would find, or how close the danger truly was. But the unease was real, and it was only growing stronger. It happened on an ordinary night, the kind of night when the house felt too still. Michael had gone upstairs early, claiming exhaustion, and Lily was already asleep with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. I wandered past his study on my way to bed and noticed something unusual. The door wasn't locked. That door was almost always shut tight, as if his work were too important or too private to share. Curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside, my heart thudding harder than I wanted to admit. Everything looked neat, as if staged for a photograph, papers stacked, pens aligned, nothing out of place. But then I saw it, a drawer left slightly open. I pulled it carefully, and that's when I found the folder. My eyes froze on the words printed across the top, life insurance. I told myself it was nothing, just responsible planning. But as I skimmed the documents, my stomach twisted. The policy had been taken out just 1 week after my mother died, when I had inherited money that I hadn't even begun to process. The beneficiary was Michael. Only Michael. The timing felt too sharp, too deliberate, like a knife pressed against the edge of my trust. I placed the papers back exactly as I found them, trying to quiet the storm inside my chest. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe he was just thinking of Lily's future. But why hadn't he told me? Why keep something like this a secret? The next day, Lily climbed into my lap with her usual sweetness, but her words cut deeper than she realized. She whispered about hearing her daddy on the phone late at night, talking quietly with her grandmother. She said he told her not to worry, that I wouldn't notice. I froze, smiling weakly to keep from alarming her, but inside my mind was racing. Secrets whispered in the dark, papers hidden in drawers, timing that didn't make sense. My little girl, with all her innocence, was unknowingly showing me cracks I could no longer ignore. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I wanted to believe the man I had trusted for years couldn't possibly be plotting anything against us. But every instinct in me said otherwise. That night, as I lay awake listening to Michael's steady breathing beside me, I felt a chill run through me. Something was wrong. I didn't know how deep it went, but I knew the unease had crossed into fear. And then Lily's dreams began, dreams that felt less like fantasy and more like warnings whispered from somewhere I couldn't see. Lily's dreams began as something I brushed off childhood imagination. Nothing more. One night, she told me she had seen her grandma, the one who had passed away not long ago, standing at the foot of her bed. She said her grandma smiled and told her to watch out for the fire. I forced a gentle laugh, tucking her hair back, and told myself it was just Lily's way of holding on to someone she missed. But the words lodged in my chest like splinters I couldn't remove. The next few nights, her dreams grew more specific. She spoke of rooms in the house filling with smoke, of doors that wouldn't open, of me carrying her in my arms as if we were escaping something I couldn't see. I tried to keep calm, but hearing her describe the way smoke curls against the ceiling or the sound of a crackling fire chilled me. She had never experienced anything like that. How could she know those details at the same time? Michael was pulling further away. He came home later, brushed me off when I asked simple questions, and spent more time locked in his study. The warmth I once clung to in our marriage was replaced with a cold distance that felt calculated. When I caught him hiding his phone the moment I walked into the room, my stomach dropped. I told myself I was imagining things, but the unease wouldn't leave me. Then there was the stranger, a man I noticed once near the edge of our property, leaning against a car as if waiting. He didn't move when I stared. He just stood there, watching. By the time I looked again, he was gone. I told Michael about it, but he shrugged, said I was overreacting. Yet his indifference only fueled the fear gnawing at me. Lily, in her innocent voice, continued to tell me more. She said her grandma whispered that the house wasn't safe. She spoke with such calm certainty that I couldn't dismiss it. My little girl, who still carried a stuffed rabbit everywhere, was now my only source of truth in a home that felt like it was closing in on me. I began checking the locks twice, 3 times before bed. I kept a glass of water by my nightstand, as if that tiny act of control could keep us safe. The air in the house felt heavier each day, the silence more suffocating. Even the creak of the floorboards started to sound like a warning. One night, after tucking Lily in, I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the faint glow under Michael's study door. I thought about the insurance papers, the hushed phone calls, the stranger outside, and I thought about Lily's dreams so detailed, so unshakable. That was the first time I admitted it to myself. Maybe my daughter wasn't just dreaming. Maybe she was being warned. And as I walked through the dark hallway, I felt something shift inside me. The house, once my shelter, now felt like a trap waiting to be sprung. I didn't know it then, but the flames Lily saw were closer than I imagined. The night Michael left, he kissed Lily on the forehead and told me he'd be back in a few days. He carried his suitcase with a calmness that felt rehearsed, too polished. The house fell into silence once his car disappeared down the street, and instead of relief, I felt the air press heavier on my chest. I checked the locks before heading upstairs. That was when the first jolt of dread struck me. Every door was locked from the outside. My hands shook as I tugged at the back door, realizing it wasn't just secure, it was sealed. My pulse quickened, but I told myself I was overreacting. Then came the faintest scent of smoke. At first it was almost sweet, like burning wood in the distance, but within minutes it thickened, acrid and suffocating. I ran to the windows. As I reached for the latch, mechanical shutters groaned down, one after another, trapping us inside. The sound was metallic, final, like the slam of a prison gate. My breath caught as I realized this was no accident. Upstairs, Lily stirred. I rushed to her, ready to shield her from the growing haze. But she looked at me with wide, steady eyes and whispered that her grandma had told her this would happen. She said we had to go through the pantry. I wanted to tell her it was just a dream, but the smoke was already curling under her bedroom door. I had no choice but to trust her. We stumbled through the hallway, coughing, the smoke biting at our throats. The pantry door creaked as I pulled it open, revealing nothing but shelves of canned food until Lily pushed aside a panel I'd never noticed. Behind it, a dark passage yawned open. I crawled first, pulling Lily close behind me. The air inside was damp, heavy with dust, but it was breathable compared to the choking smoke above. The tunnel was narrow, pressing against my shoulders, and every scrape of my knees against the ground echoed like a countdown. My heart raced with terror, but Lily's small voice urged me forward, calm and sure, as though she'd walked this path before in her dreams. Finally, a faint glimmer of light appeared. I pushed forward, bursting into the cool night air inside the garden shed. I pulled Lily into my arms, gulping the fresh air like I'd never tasted it before. Behind us, the roar of flames grew louder. Through the cracks of the shed, I saw the glow of our home consumed, orange against the black sky. My safe place, the walls that had held my family, were collapsing into fire. We stood there, trembling, holding on to each other as if we were the only two people left in the world. Relief washed over me, but it was laced with a deeper, sharper realization this wasn't fate. It was a plan, and Michael was at the center of it. The night of the fire blurred into flashing lights, shouting voices, and the weight of a blanket someone draped over my shoulders. I stood in the street clutching Lily, watching our home collapse into glowing embers. Neighbors gathered, their faces a mix of pity and shock. I wanted to scream that this wasn't an accident, that the man they thought they knew had locked us inside. But my throat burned too much to speak. By morning, investigators combed through the wreckage. I heard them say the word accelerants, watched them pull apart the security system box, showing wires that had been deliberately cut. It wasn't faulty wiring or bad luck. Someone had staged it. My blood ran cold as I remembered Michael's calm departure. The shutters slamming shut, the smoke that came too fast. When Michael returned, pretending surprise, the investigators were ready. They questioned his timeline, the receipts he couldn't produce, the phone records that placed him nowhere near where he claimed. His mask cracked, and when pressed, he pointed his finger not at me, but at his own mother. He said Helen had been the one pushing, orchestrating, whispering. I sat there, numb, listening to him shift the weight of blame as though his hands weren't already drenched in it. The truth unraveled in fragments. Bank transfers, insurance documents Helen had helped file. A pattern of control and resentment disguised as family concern. Under pressure, Helen broke. Her sharp, unyielding demeanor crumbled into tears as she admitted her part. She had wanted me gone, but Michael had wanted more. He wanted everything. The courtroom was colder than the ashes of my home. Sitting there, I felt the eyes of the community on me. People I'd waved to at the grocery store now looking at me with a mixture of sorrow and disbelief. I listened as lawyers laid out the case piece by piece. The evidence so overwhelming it felt like a tide I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. Watching Michael in his suit, pretending innocence, made me ache with both anger and grief. This was the man I once trusted with my life, the father of my child, and beside him, Helen, once a grandmother figure, now exposed as part of the nightmare. The gavel struck, echoing like a heartbeat. The trial wasn't over, but the truth was undeniable now. All that remained was the final verdict, the sentencing that would decide if justice would finally be ours. The courtroom felt like a pressure chamber, every eye fixed on the two people who had tried to destroy me. Michael sat at the defense table, his jaw tight, his hands fidgeting. He spoke with false conviction, insisting Helen had manipulated him, that he was nothing more than a pawn in her plan. Watching him twist the truth was like watching a stranger wear my husband's face. But then Helen broke, under relentless questioning. Her sharp mask shattered. She shouted through tears, admitting to the lies, the paperwork, the whispers that had fueled Michael's greed. She confessed that she had wanted me out of the picture, that she believed Lily would be better raised without me. Her words cut deeper than the flames ever had. And then, the moment I will never forget Lily's testimony. My little girl, barely tall enough to see over the railing, spoke with a steadiness that silenced the entire room. She told the court about her dreams, how her grandma had warned her about the fire, how she had led us through the tunnel. She didn't use big words or legal terms. She just told the truth, pure and unshaken. And somehow, in that innocence, she pierced through every layer of deceit. The jury didn't take long. Michael was sentenced to 15 years. Helen received 8. The gavel came down, and the sound reverberated through me like a final heartbeat of a marriage, a family, already long dead. Relief washed over me, but it wasn't clean. It came tangled with grief, betrayal, and a hollow ache that no verdict could erase. Justice had been served, but the scars remained. As I walked out of the courtroom, holding Lily's hand, I felt the weight of truth pressing down and the faint stirrings of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes. After the sentencing, life felt strangely quiet. For the first time in years, silence wasn't suffocating, it was safe. Lily and I moved into a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. The paint was chipped, the kitchen a little outdated, but it was ours. No locked shutters, no secrets in the walls, just the hum of the heater, the smell of fresh coffee, and the sound of Lily's laughter echoing in a space that belonged to us. Our days fell into gentle routines. I started working again at the community center, slowly piecing back parts of myself I thought I had lost. What began as volunteering turned into something larger, a foundation supporting women who had faced betrayal and violence. Each story I heard reminded me I wasn't alone, and each woman I helped gave me strength in return. Lily's healing was slower, tender. Therapy sessions became part of our weeks, and little by little, I watched her nightmares ease. She discovered painting messy, colorful swirls that filled our fridge door. Friends came back into her life, kids her age who didn't look at her with pity, but with curiosity, asking her to play. I saw her shoulders lift again, the weight of fear slowly slipping away. Somewhere along the way, Michael Hayes, our therapist, became more than a professional guide. He started joining us for dinner, fixing a broken step on our porch, helping Lily with her school projects. He never pushed, never filled the silence with empty promises. He simply showed up, again and again, until his presence felt like family. For the first time, I understood the meaning of a chosen family, one built not from obligation, but from trust and kindness. As Christmas approached, we decorated the little house with strings of lights and paper snowflakes. Lily cut out herself. On Christmas Eve, we sat by the fire, the glow soft against our faces. Lily handed me a drawing our house, the 3 of us standing in front, smiling. She had written one word at the top: home. I held her close, tears warming my eyes. For so long, I had clung to survival, but now I saw the path beyond it: resilience, love, and the possibility of new beginnings. I realized something that night. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who stands by you in the fire and who helps you rebuild once the ashes settle. As the clock moved closer to midnight, I felt peace settle over me. Not because everything was perfect, but because we had made it through. Lily was safe, I was stronger, and together, we were finally free. Looking back now, I realized that surviving the fire was only part of the journey. The harder part was rebuilding trust in myself, in the people around me, and in the possibility of love that doesn't wound, but heals. I learned that intuition is not something to dismiss. The quiet voice inside us often knows the truth long before we dare to admit it. For me, this story is about more than betrayal. It's about resilience, the kind that rises even when the world feels like it's burning down. It's about learning that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who choose to stand beside you when everything else falls apart. And it's about holding on to hope, even in the darkest hours, because healing is possible. Maybe you've faced your own storms, or maybe you're still in the middle of one. Wherever you are, I want you to remember you are stronger than you think, and you are not alone. Protect the people you love, listen to your instincts, and never be afraid to start over. If this story touched you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need the reminder that resilience is real. Leave a comment. Let me know what part spoke to you most. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories of family, struggle, and strength. Thank you for listening. From my heart to yours, this is not just the end of a story, but the beginning of hope.